the big story from Nigeria, which is the passage of the Petroleum Industry Bill by the Senate on Thursday, still echoing around the country with industry professionals, economists, and analysts poring over the details of the much-awaited legislation. Tonight on RS Exchange, we're engaging Olumide Esan, partner and oil and gas leader at DELOITTE Nigeria, on the PIB on the new bill. Esan will be reading the tea leaves of the new legislation for us. A good evening to you, sir, and thanks for being here on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Give me your professional consideration of the passage of the PIB. Is this legislation passed by the National Assembly or the Senate consistent with your expectations as a professional in the oil and gas advisory business?
Well, so let me start by congratulating Nigeria and Nigerians. This is a journey that's been on for over 20 years. And if you imagine what we have lost as a nation by not passing this bill, you can just imagine it was estimated between 2015 and 2019, around $70 billion was invested in oil and gas in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa specifically, and Nigeria only got $3 billion out of this investment, just under 5%. So having this bill passed by the both chambers of National Assembly is definitely a good step in the right direction. If you look at Nigeria, we've got estimated reserve of about 200 TCF in gas and 40 billion in oil. And our current production, even if we were able to produce 2.3 million barrels, assuming we didn't have OPEC restrictions, it would have taken us 47 years to monetize what we currently have as reserve. And similarly, with our 8 billion SCOF production of gas a day, it would take 70 years to monetize what we have. So now we are in the energy transition phase around the world. We need to quickly monetize what we have in Nigeria and use it to fire development in other sectors of Nigerian economy. So it's certainly good news, and of course it's welcomed by most people.
Well, as everybody knows, Olumide, good news do come with responsibility. So, what are the key elements of this oil and gas legislation for you?
Yeah, so if you look at the PIB, it's got 5 chapters. The first chapter focusing on governance, the second one on administration, and the third one on host community development, the fourth one on the fiscals, and the fifth one on miscellaneous. Now, all these different components are important. If you look at the governance bit, you see part 3 of the bill set up an upstream regulator that is focused and dedicated to the upstream. I'm taking that role away from the DPR. So you have the Nigerian Upstream Regulatory Commission. And also in part 4, you've got the setting up of the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority. And then the part 5, which is also important, focus so much on NNPC and commercializing NNPC. So, if you look at that just on the governance bit, it's significant for the oil and gas sector. If you move on to chapter 3, where we're talking about the host community development, we all know about the degradation in Niger Delta and the underdevelopment in that part of Nigeria. So setting up formally the host community development fund would certainly bring about, if you like, some aggregation of efforts, in the sector to ensure that there is some money invested in those localities where we have, the production going on, or we have the pipeline. So, setting up of the host community development fund is certainly a key element of this legislation and is well welcome. Now, we don't know what the eventual rate will be, whether it's 3%, whether it's 5%. I think the focus is ensuring that, whatever the rate is eventually, it is impactful on the local population. Tangible development, scenarios that we can focus on and ensure that, Nigerians really feel the impact of this positive legislation.
Let me ask you this question directly, and I'm going to read it directly from my script. Do you think this document will enthrone an orderly, transparent, and accountable structure for the oil industry? Yes or no?
Yeah, but on the face of it, the answer is yes, but this all depends on implementation. It all depends on the commitment of the government. It all depends on the political will. And so if you look at the document in itself, yes, it's able to actually engender probity and transparency in the industry.
What do you mean by implementation? We're putting a bill together. So don't we have the structures to implement it? We talk about the governance framework. So who's going to implement it? So where do we get the political will to do this again after 20 years?
Yes, let's not look far. We've got several agencies, MDAs right now in Nigeria. It is people that we implement this document. And so, government is the only one who can make this work. If government is committed to it, to follow it through, we will see the impact that it is expected to make. But then, we cannot look at the document in isolation if we do not consider, the commitment on the part of the government to ensure that this really makes impact in the oil and gas sector in Nigeria. So, the document itself is not by any means perfect, but it's a good way to start the journey. This is just the beginning of the journey. The engagement will continue between the government and the oil industry. Because it must be a win-win at the end of the day. Government, on behalf of the people, holds trust on the resources, while the investors have got the capital. So it must work, and the only way it can work is with full commitment of the government, to actually implement this.
Why did we need a PIB in the first place?
We have the Petroleum legislation of 1969. That's such a long time away. So this is a bold attempt to reform the entire sector. So, and we started back in 2001 with the Oil and Gas Industry Committee set up by the then President Olusegun Obasanjo, and that morphed into several other draft bills, including the NAGFRA bill and then the several PIBs. The attempt was to, reform the sector. The attempt was to rejig the sector and make sure it's fit for purpose in where we are right now. Because if you imagine right now, the world is in transition phase, who knows 40, 30 years from now, whether anyone will still be using fossil fuel. So the reality is that we need a bill that will reject the industry. I remember the moment you make investors understand that you're about, resetting a bill, what happens is most people withhold investments because investors treasure certainty. They do not want to commit money, and sometimes along the line, the rules of engagement are being changed. So it's a very positive thing to have the bill passed now. So that certainty, again, like I said, some people estimate we've lost over $200 billion in investment because we didn't have this PIB passed. Yeah. Now, if have it passed, hopefully, it will provide the assurance and comfort that the international community needs, and they start investing again in Nigeria.
Well, the international investors need comfort. Millions of Nigerians need more comfort than the foreign investors, because my question is, will this piece of legislation help us resolve some of those very naughty and embarrassing issues in the industry? Tax payments, royalties, some stories about oil companies not paying their right tax and royalty to the government, proper accounting of how many barrels of crude are lifted from Nigeria every day. Those are the issues Nigerians want resolved. Will the PIB help us resolve them?
If you're asking for a yes or no answer, the answer is yes. It's an improvement on what we currently have. It certainly does promote more transparency in the way oil and gas resources are managed. And I think it behoves on government to also convince Nigeria, that truly this is meant to impact every single Nigerian. So we see a situation where, people don't feel the impact of what's currently being produced and generated from the oil industry. Now, if you take, for example, the issue of the Host Community Development Fund, what the intention is to ensure that we have transparency around how these funds are disbursed. As a matter of fact, there is a requirement for audited financial statement to be prepared in respect of each trust that it will set up by the settlor, which will be the oil companies. So, aggregate it all, and what you see is we want to optimize what we have, we want to commercialize our resources, and want to use that to fire the other sectors of the Nigerian economy. I am positive, and I think Nigerians need to continue to hold their government accountable, and if we continue to do that, we will get the best out of the PIB.
Part of my question was if we will have a proper accounting of how many barrels of crude are lifted from Nigeria every day.
There are mechanisms in place even right now to track what is lifted in Nigeria. There's hydrocarbon accounting, and DPR has all those details. NETI also does the audits, and so they often are able to reconcile those numbers.
What about the fiscal terms for the E&P operators, the OPEX allocation on Frontier Basin in the PIB?
Yes, but on the face of it, the fiscals look very great. They look better than what it was before. On the face of it, okay, so the headline rate, for example, the maximum rate before now was 85%. That would drop to 60% with 30% in hydrocarbon tax and 30% under the company's income tax act. So if you look at it on the face of it, it is a better term, 60% as against 80%, 85% for the PPT. And the same thing for royalty. The maximum royalty rate before now was 20%. Now you have the maximum under this bill as 15%, even though there is now some element of price-based royalty. So, however, at the end of the day, what determines whether this is a better bill or better fiscal terms for the oil companies is about the project economics. Does it make the projects to fly? Does it encourage the investors to put the money on the table?
In 10 seconds, when are we going to, what's the timeline for the implementation of the PIB? Any idea?
Yeah, so if you look at the bill, there is 18 months transition period for companies that want to convert the existing contracts. However, as you may already be aware, you're not mandated to convert your existing contracts. Either you convert within 18 months or you wait for the expiration of your current license and then automatically you are converted to the new bill. However, certain aspects of the bill, including the incorporation of NNPC Limited, needs to happen within the first 6 months. I think government has got to be flexible about the implementation. As you know, we need infrastructure, we need the technical know-how to be able to implement this. We are unbundling DPR, for example, into 2 regulatory agencies. It will take time to build the capacity, and so we just need to ensure that we carry all the stakeholders along as a government and as a people, and we make the best out of the PIB.
Okay, let's make the best out of it. Thank you so much, Olumide Esan, partner and oil and gas leader at Deloitte Nigeria. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Have a great weekend.